Welcome back, casuals.
Woo! Let's get motivated.
They carried me out and then just launched me
True.
like a little javelin. Welcome back, casuals. Another one. We got a mighty fine guest in today. Someone I've been pretty keen on. We usually have like the NRL, the old NRL stars, or we've had a few boxers, kickboxers. We have someone today who's a bit different, which I'm 100% keen on. He rocks a mighty fine beard, and he's got an Akubra that's probably been to most places than most people have seen. He's an adventurer. He's an actor. He's a tour guide, and last of all, he's the master chef of the cane toads. We've got David McMahon here. How you going, brother?
Very, very good, lads. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming, man.
Thanks
I think
for
last time we were close to getting you on, you went on Sunrise instead.
Yeah. I know. It's been
Bit of
a
a
flat out
change.
year of media stuff, so yeah, buddy. It's all a bit of fun.
Yeah.
That's good, eh?
You don't mind doing a bit of the media stuff? How'd you get into all the social media stuff?
Well, it just sort of happened by accident, like posting a few videos that I thought people might find interesting, stuff that I lucky enough get to do all the time, and realising that a lot of the country I get to explore, very few people get the chance to get out and see. So filming these little videos, and some of them started to do pretty well, and it's sort of all of a sudden you get a video that gets a couple of million views, and you've gone from 1,000 followers to 15,000 followers overnight. You go, oh.
Sort of got you keen to keep on doing it then? When you see that, you're just like, oh, I might as well keep doing it.
Absolutely, because I mean, the comments and the videos people are sharing and the comments are so overwhelmingly positive. Like people learning
awesome.
a bit about the country and parts of Australia, as I said, that few people get to see. So
Well, Australia's so big, isn't it, that there's like so many places that you want to go, but you don't get to see. Like I was talking to someone literally at work the other day who's never left Queensland.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's
And he's like 30.
Pretty common, yeah.
And it's like there's so many places that are so remote as well, I suppose, that are hard to get to. And I don't know, Australia's a fucking hard country to see.
without it, even if you've done the big lap around the country in a van or whatever, you're
So
going
many
to have
remote
missed
places.
huge amounts.
Yep.
I mean, so much of it's four-wheel drive access. You know, you go into the Northern Territory, you've got huge amounts of traditionally owned land, so you need permission to be on all that private land. So, you know, even cattle stations, enormous cattle stations that are hiding some of the most spectacular country you've never heard
You can't
of.
access it otherwise. You know, 100%. No, I like a lot of your videos. I think are awesome because they're educational. Like when I'm watching it, I'm actually learning something from it. It's not just like the doom scroll, which I'm a sucker for. Where I'm just like, you see someone eating shit on a skateboard or something.
Nothing wrong with that, but why not
Has its
learn
time
something
and
at the
place.
same time?
But some of the knowledge you have, man, is incredible. And like, how did you delve into that? Like, what was the first thing that got you? You've been in it for a long time. You grew up in the Territory.
Yeah, it's been an extraordinary ride, really. So
Yep.
I grew up in South Australia, in the Fluoro Peninsula. So, McLaren Vale wine region, sort of around that area. A long way from the Territory. But like every spare second since I can remember, I've been in the bush exploring, doing something and asking questions. Like saying, what is that? Wanting to know, just that curious mind from a little fella. And I had an auntie who was a remote nurse in Arnhem Land. So she's working in a really remote community out in the west of Arnhem Land.
Nullarbor?
No, it's called Gunbalanya.
Oh, yeah? Nice.
Yeah, about 800 people. Yeah, in the west of Arnhem Land there.
Proper remote.
Yeah, it's a long way from anywhere. And then I had an uncle that was running the boat for this little tourism company on the Arnhem Land coast that just did these extraordinary tours out into a place called Coburg Peninsula. And bought an 80 series, drove up through the guts of Australia, up through the centre, straight into Arnhem Land. And I remember just getting into Arnhem Land, it's pitch black, it's dark, I'm going, where am I? Waking up in the morning, you've got this enormous plateau behind me, I'm sitting on this little balcony overlooking this billabong, and a crocodile comes out and it's eating a fish, and I'm having a cup of tea thinking, where have I landed? Like honestly, it's like rocking up and going, oh, this is Mars, is it? Like, it's so different. And that was 15 years ago. I mean, it's just been an extraordinary journey.
So where you grew up, what's that sort of area like? What's the...
It's mostly
habitat, you'd say.
It's one of Australia's most cleared areas of land. So there's huge amounts of cleared farmland. And growing up, you had to find those remnant patches of bush. And that's all my memories growing up are heading out into these little pockets like valleys and things and walking, just trying to find patches of bush where there was still something going on, like looking for snakes, looking for lizards, just always looking for those wild places. So now to be able to spend all my time in the most wildest places in the planet is, I'm pinching myself every day thinking, how did I get this lucky?
It's awesome. We've actually spoke about dream jobs on this podcast before, like questioning each other, and I was like, I think mine would be a tour guide.
Well, that's the other thing, is if you really want to be a tour guide, you can do it. Anyone can do it. You can jump in tomorrow. You need hardly any experience. You just need a bit of enthusiasm and, willingness to learn. You're not going to jump straight into a high-end company like sort of what I'm guiding now, but you start with backpacker tours. Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
And it is a wild job.
Yep.
I mean, some people would do it for a while and then go, oh, yeah, it's actually not as much fun as I thought it was going to be, But
Yeah, okay. Because it is
it's not
work
for everyone
as well. It's work
You're
as well.
with people
Yeah.
all the time. And
True.
you're in charge of mustering geese sometimes.
A lot of
you sort thing.
responsibility there, yeah.
it can be.
Especially amongst crocodiles.
Yeah, trying to keep people alive in the bush is, nine-tenths of it. But,
Oh, I think it's awesome. I've seen those Andrew Eucles tours.
Yeah.
I thought I would love
I know
to
Andrew,
do one.
yeah.
You actually know him?
Yeah, he's a cool fellow. Yeah, he's
amazing.
He's just done some crazy stuff. Like,
I don't know how he's not a household name in Australia. Like, the stuff he has done is insane. I think I've spoken about him on the podcast
Yeah.
too. The fellow who gets those snakes and catches the rabbits and all that sort
You
of
reckon
stuff.
he's
Yeah.
more hectic than Owen?
I reckon he is. I reckon he can catch any animal. I reckon he's one of the most hectic.
yeah, well, I mean, that's sort of his thing, is he can just run down and chase and catch an animal. He caught a buffalo, like tailed a buffalo. You think, who's catching? He's catching wild donkeys and breaking them in. Like,
unreal.
he has these ideas. He just runs at 100 miles an hour and sort of
Yep.
probably ADHD or one of those, just but making it work. for
Where's
him,
he based?
He's in the territory now.
He's
He's
done
So
some
you know
stuff
him. You know
together.
him.
Yeah,
That's
he's on a
awesome,
station called Finnis River Station,
Yep.
and they've got a fantastic tourism product. This family have just, on a working cattle station on the Daly River, have started this great tourism product, and he's sort of linked into that. So he's got his own little camp out there, and you can go out and do tours where you go look and catch a wild pig and, learn a bit about the bush. And, see him in all his glory.
Yeah.
Covered in mud, chasing down a wild pig.
Yeah.
So do you do much hunting, or do you just do tours and like guides through and see the animals and stuff?
Outside
like
of work, I do a bit of hunting,
Yeah.
but mostly magpie geese. Every time the magpie goose season's on, in the Northern Territory, we have over 3 million magpie geese.
Holy.
So we've got
Wow.
it's a really sustainable hunting. There's a period every year they look at how many geese have bred up and how many, how good the season was, and then set quotas and all that sort of thing. And magpie geese is just the best meat you've ever had.
Really?
It's
Yeah, I
like,
think they
it's
taste
like a
good, eh?
flying piece of lamb. It's nothing like any other bird.
Really?
It's really dark meat, really rich. It's got this beautiful fat, but not overly gamey at the same time. Like it's meat that everybody, cooked right, everyone would get into and go, oh my God, where's this been all my life?
Unreal.
So yeah, go bang a few off every year, and a bit of pig hunting every now and then when I get the time.
Yep.
There's no shortage of pigs in the top end.
How do you catch the magpie geese?
Shotgun?
Shotgun?
Yeah,
Awesome.
I mean, traditionally-
Same sort of like similar to duck shooting, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just sort of hide out, and they early mornings, late afternoon, they're flying overhead. They roost up in trees and then spend the day feeding on the floodplains. So they're pretty unique waterfowl. And as they're flying over, if they're low enough, you can drop a few out of the sky and have a feed. Cook
What do you
them.
just barbecue them up?
Heaps of ways to do it. Like I've done
Underground.
beautiful schnitzels and
Sorry to cut in, but are you a chef?
Yeah.
You're a chef. I thought you were a chef because of the cane toad, obviously, which we'll get to eventually. Yeah, which is unreal.
it seems like
Yeah,
a previous life, but I've always loved food and jumped into cooking at a pretty young age. As soon as I finished school, did an apprenticeship, ended up working in fine dining restaurants, having to drive an hour to and from where I lived into the city to work in these flash restaurants. And looking back, amazing experience, learnt so much, working 80, 100-hour weeks, all that
Man,
crazy stuff in that
yep.
sort of high-end food. But it's a different world to what I'm living now. I look at my life as before and after, like two different worlds. But
that's unreal. So obviously, with the magpie geese, there's multiple ways of cooking them.
My favourite though, I mean, keep it simple and cook it on the hot coals. Keep it whole, pluck it, burn the feathers off, splay it open, and cook it straight over hot coals. Traditional way. I've learned how to cook straight on, not even a rack or anything. You cook it on the hot coals. You get your coals right and timber and everything. And first time I saw it, I thought, this will be a bit gritty. You have coals stuck everywhere, but you pull them off, dust it off. It's
Good to go.
perfect.
Oh,
Absolutely
man, that's
perfect.
awesome. That's wicked. And then, leading into the cane toads, man, how did that come about?
Yeah, well, that was, I love travel. Every spare minute I have, I'm somewhere else in the world trying to get somewhere wild and experience something different. And I remember I was in Singapore. My wife was working in Singapore. I was at the markets, and these old aunties are cooking up cane toads. I mean, there they are before, and I was watching them cut the legs off and peel the skin back. And these are cane toads. I thought, I've got to give it a go. and tried this dish. It sounds horrible, it's called frog leg porridge. Much better than it sounds. So it's like congee, you know, where you get rice and it's cooked down in stock until it's a porridge. So that's delicious, lots of umami flavours. And then the toads were poached in this sticky black sauce, and I just remember eating it like a perfect chicken wing, going, this is delicious. Got the aunties to show me how to prepare them so I'm not poisoning myself. And realised, all the toxins are in the skin. So you cut the legs off, pull the skin back.
So they showed you there? They taught you? Unreal.
And you've got these big meaty legs. So I got back to Australia. In the top end, there are, same over in Queensland, there's cane toads everywhere.
Yep.
Filmed a video of saying, this is how you can cook and eat them. If you can't beat them, eat them.
Yeah.
And it went nuts. And then next thing you know, I'm part of an exhibition in Mona Gallery down in Tasmania. And
for the TV, for that show.
And then that's led to a TV show that's coming out in a couple of weeks' time now.
I'm keen to watch that. Because I've just seen the premises of it, and it makes sense. Like, why don't they capitalise on the food that has been invaded in Australia, you know?
Oh, I mean,
make
things like deer and rabbit and cane toad's a pretty extreme one.
Yep.
But there's so much good meat running around the bush.
I listened to that Adam Greentree went on Joe Rogan, and he spoke a lot about that, how the hunting scene in Australia doesn't just capitalise on it. Like, sometimes they'll fly out in choppers and just kill multiple buffalo and multiple pigs and not do anything with the meat.
Yeah,
just sit there and rot. You know?
So, some of it is the problem of remoteness in the top end.
Yeah, trying to. Yep.
You couldn't get a truck into half the places to
take the meat
away, and they still need to eradicate those buffalo. But there is a huge industry in the top end with buffalo sending over to the Philippines.
Right.
And that's all live mustard pushed up into a truck. The horns get cut off, and one of the wildest things you'll ever see. Being in a bull catcher, riding through the scrub, and any termite mound under 2 foot, you just ride straight through, rounding up these enormous big buffalo.
Yeah.
Some of the most fun I've ever had is out on those properties.
That would be fun.
Chasing around buffalo.
So that back to that, like the cane toads, the TV show comes out on ABC soon, eh?
Yeah. Later in January, 21st or 22nd, somewhere around there. It'll be on iView as well.
Yep.
And they go right around Australia. It's called Eat the Invaders, and looking at sustainable, ways to eat and utilise all these invasive species.
Yep.
And I got the cane toad episode. So it was unreal. They flew me down to Tassie, right? So I've flown down 20 frozen whole cane toads into Tassie, which I thought biosecurity-wise is going to be a disaster.
How'd you manage that?
Talked to Parks and they said, as long as they're dead and frozen, and they signed the ticket, I had the permit and everything, took it to the Qantas freezer, and they're looking at me like, you're sending what to where? Cane toads to Tasman. What are you doing with them? And then I said, we're going to eat them. These guys are just,
some weird looks.
Yeah, jaws on the floor going, righto, mate. But one of the strangest things I've ever done, but all in a bit of fun, and it raises the question. It's a bit of a topic.
Yep.
What do we do with all these invasive species, and can we utilise them on menus? Why not?
Awesome. I reckon why not?
Secretly delicious, eh?
Yeah, it's like a good chicken wing.
Watch the episode to see the reaction.
Yeah. Well, I'm keen to see it.
I'll cook you lads up some cane toad and see what you think.
The thing with me is the thought of eating certain things.
Yeah, we've spoken about that before,
they're probably delicious, but the thought of putting that...
Yeah, you said that we've spoken about, like, when you go to Thailand, trying all the food over there, and Hoops reckons, not keen, not keen, yeah.
I'm a bit of a fucking sook.
my list of foods I've eaten around the world would turn your toenails yellow.
Yeah, what else? What other stuff? Because
I've eaten the unmentionables, like cat and dog. I've eaten cat with Aboriginal people, roasted on the fire. One of the best meats I've ever had. That is so surprisingly
They
good.
are such a pest, man. They're going to be Australia's biggest pest or what?
Without a doubt, our most destructive pest.
So
would
if you're on
be
the
feral
topic
cats.
of eating something that's destroying their habitat, that would be, let's put them on our dinner. If it's nice, let's put it on our plate every night.
Yeah, it's one of those things, we choose which animals we keep as a pet and which animals we eat, and it's very hard to break down that, but I've eaten dog in Vietnam.
So dog, true. I don't know if
was delicious.
I don't know if I've ever knowingly tried dog, maybe I have. But
it's like lamb. It's not what you'd expect it to taste like. I don't know what I expected it to taste like, but it was, I had basically a degustation of dog in this little village in Vietnam, and this little restaurant only serves dog. And you had like a boned loin, and then I had a shank, and all these different ways. And I'm sitting there going, this is delicious.
Yeah.
And in that part of Vietnam, they farm dogs like we farm pigs. So if there you
go.
A dog and a pig are about as smart as each other.
Yep.
We've just chosen one to be a pet and one to be food.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just the norms for people. Yeah. What other sort of animals?
Well, I've eaten things like balut, which is the duck egg, where the duck starts to so growing up in
the ferment and that. Is that the one?
Well, it's growing in the egg, so you get it. You've got feathers on the duck, and you've got a bit of crunchy meat.
It's almost ready to hatch. You fucking eat it.
And it's boiled, so it's just like a hard-boiled egg, and you crack it open, and straight away you can see a baby duck in there, and it's going to make most people just
visually,
you're not going to eat it. I thought, I'll give it a go, a bit of vinegar on it, whatever, how they have it. And it was delicious. It was just like a really good boiled egg. And I've been lucky to not be burdened with that, what your brain, what your eyes see.
Yeah.
I can eat anything and
take through
does it taste good?
Yeah. Yep.
I love durian, that stinky fruit that most people can't get past their nose.
Which one's that one? I don't know if I know
It's the
durian.
stinkiest fruit in the world. It's famously banned in most hotels and trains in Southeast Asia. It's a huge fruit, and you break it apart. It tastes like sweet custard, but it smells like rotten vomit.
Oh,
It's
really? So
really
once you get
strong.
past the smell, it tastes all right. But
If you've been to a market in Southeast Asia, somewhere like Malaysia or even Indonesia,
Yep.
you'll smell it. Once you've smelled it once, you go, "What
That's
is
the
that
distinct-
horrible
Yeah,
smell?"
okay.
And that's durian.
unreal.
But we don't see a lot of it in Australia. We do grow a bit of it and export it, but it's known as the king of fruits because it is so complex, and you can spend a lot of money on like a high grade fruit, like buying wine.
Yep.
Some of it's D14, and they've graded all or whatever, and you eat this. Once you get it past the nose, it's just this sweet, complex custardy. It's like no other fruit.
Unreal.
Most people can't get it past their nose.
Yeah, fair enough.
Probably with a lot of things, eh? It's
Yeah.
just fucking floating around out there. No one wants to eat it.
Yeah, stuff that people don't know. That's right. But there's some amazing. Like I tried the guinea pig in that over in was that Peru? I think guinea pig was big in Peru.
Yeah, the
Like,
Peruvians love it.
Yeah, some sort of country. Like countries just have their own little, sort of things that they llama. I tried that over there. Like some certain people just have their own little things. I think it's interesting to try it when you travel.
Both meats I'm desperate to try. Guinea
Yeah.
pigs, I mean, every time I see a pet guinea pig, I think, that would be delicious. Like when you know how to prepare animals and you're used to eating things in the bush or whatever.
Yeah,
I've spent
true.
so much time with Aboriginal people
Yeah.
eating everything from bat to sea turtle and dugong and things that
Been keen.
they've,
I want to try that too. Eh?
they've been sustainably hunting forever. And
Yep.
it's no coincidence that the highest densities of these animals like sea turtles and dugong in the world are in the areas where people still eat them in Arnhem Land because people are looking after the country as they
Yeah.
always have.
What
Yeah,
if we get into that? Like when you moved from your little South Australia, moving up there, what was your initial sort of reaction from the mobs up there to you strolling in there and eager to learn and looking about and stuff like that?
Yeah, Arnhem Land in particular is just this extraordinary place where whitefellas haven't really been able to get in there and stuff it up like the history of every other part of the country.
Yeah.
So Aboriginal people, they're really open in Arnhem Land to teaching and learning things off you. But if you show an interest, especially once I started to learn language, it's like, all right, this young fella's interested and worth teaching. And it's a system of layering knowledge. So you can't learn one bit of knowledge till you've, mastered the knowledge before it. And once you've shown a capacity for learning, people are just so open. And it's been the privilege of a lifetime working in Arnhem Land with Aboriginal people and learning this phenomenal wealth of knowledge. There's just so much information. People are living these extraordinary lives with the most complex kinship systems in the world.
Yeah.
These are civilizations. We think of them as primitive people, and it couldn't be more opposite. It's so sophisticated, so technical. Every element of daily life, there's rules to live by and laws that once you unlock, they make so much sense for the country.
Well, that's awesome.
Because that's one thing that's annoying for myself. Like you're reading all the comments and the media pushes a fucking bullshit agenda, but then people are saying, "Oh, around for 80,000 years, and all they discovered was a stick."
Yeah.
And it's like they don't
classic.
understand all
Yeah.
the knowledge that these people have and astrology back in the day. The first bakers, the first
Yeah.
almost everything. Man.
17,000 years ago, Aboriginal people, before any other human on the planet had thought of it, were grinding seed, turning it into bread, and baking it in hot coals
Yeah.
and eating what is essentially a flatbread.
Yep.
The Barora and fish traps, 40,000-year-old structures that are still there today for farming fish.
Yeah.
Collecting and creating an unnatural abundance of food, not just hunter-gatherers that are going around and going, "Oh, this is in season, we'll grab that." Actually creating an overabundance of a species that can then be traded. And, the trade routes throughout the country are extraordinary. Thousands of kilometres of interconnecting trade routes where goods have come into northern Australia from as far as China through Indonesia that for 400 to 1,000 years before whitefellas rock up, Indonesians are working with Aboriginal people along the North Australian shore, trading sea cucumbers and turtle shell. Aboriginal people are renting land, the Yolngu and the Arakbi and all the different mobs along the coast, and goods like metal implements, knives and axes and all sorts of things are then traded into Northern Australia and find their way right through the trade routes into Central Australia. It's a sophisticated trade technology, and that went as far as China.
Yeah. This is stuff we should have been learning in primary school, in high school. This stuff,
It flips your idea and understanding of what traditional life for Aboriginal people was and still is today for people in places like Arnhem Land.
Yep. Still so untouched.
Yeah, it's
continuing.
an amazing place. If anyone gets the chance to get into Arnhem Land, you'll be welcomed with open arms, and it'll whatever idea you think you've got about Aboriginal people, it'll flip it on its head. You know.
What about all the medicinal sort of stuff as well? Have you learned a bit of that?
Yeah, so coming from that chefing background, I was interested in the food, but that led on to medicine as well. Like now I'm a plant addict. I just love any bit of knowledge I can get on ethnobotany. So, the traditional uses of plants, I'm all for. And the women in particular hold that knowledge in Arnhem Land.
Really?
Have this phenomenal knowledge of medicine, phenomenal knowledge of food, even, ways of preparing toxic food to make it into something that's not only edible, but absolutely delicious. Yeah, thousands of generations of accumulative knowledge. And I can mix that then with the Western science ideas. So I know, maybe 1,000 Latin names of plants. So these start to link everything together and know in a botanical sense what everything is. And then you've got the traditional knowledge, and it just becomes addictive. I want to know more and more and more. And you never stop learning. Yeah. It's just endless streams of information to download into your brain off Aboriginal people.
Man.
How much of the language do you know? Do you have full conversations with mob up there?
Yeah, so I haven't got to the point of being fully conversational, but 2 languages, Western Arnhem language called Gunwinku and a Northeast Arnhem language, Yungamata. I know, many words, so I can make sentences and I can always understand what's being said as far as, follow conversations by knowing key words. But they're really complex languages, We think they'd be simple languages, but they've been around and evolved for so long. They're really sophisticated, complex languages, and
hard language to learn.
They're hard to learn, because you think differently. Yeah, sometimes the way you're directing your conversation to people, you've got to be thinking about which direction you're facing, because everything ties into north, east, south, west. But there's binning words for north, like Gukbi is north. So you're relating to people depending on which direction you're facing. So you always have a sense of where you are and what direction you're facing.
That is
things like that it's just so different than the way we're thinking and speaking. So it's a lot to learn.
But because it's never been written down, they're dumb cunts.
That idea. I mean, the thing is with oral cultures, oral cultures are so much more sophisticated than literal cultures, because at one point when we come up in Mesopotamia, in modern-day Iraq, someone invented written language. It's a huge leap forward. But all of a sudden, now you only need certain experts in certain fields, and they write the book and anyone can access the information. Yeah. But in oral cultures, everyone's got to be the expert in everything, and you've got to be able to pass that knowledge on through the generations without that knowledge changing over time. We imagine that the creation stories and things over time, for want of a better term, the Chinese whispers idea but the way knowledge is passed on, it is exactly the same as it was 1,000 generations ago, because of these really sophisticated techniques. You're not allowed to share any information with anyone until you've proven that you've learnt it and can share it the exact way that you were taught it.
It's like setting the standard.
And that goes through generations. So
I suppose with written, when it becomes written, you probably lose a lot of the depth to it. When it's oral,
and your brain stops working. Like, you no longer have to remember so much. So the old people, they've got PhDs in insects. They've got PhDs in botany. They know every single fish in the ocean and got names for it. So, for us, that would be specific fields of expertise. But for Aboriginal people, they've got to know everything and be able to pass that knowledge on. So they've also got to be teachers. And I've worked a lot with scientists, and some of the best scientists are the worst teachers. Like, you can be great at learning things, but passing that on in the classroom doesn't always, but Aboriginal people have got it all sorted.
That's amazing, eh?
Well, how do you feel like, this is one question I was keen to ask, like, how do you find when you're running your tours, people from other countries, how they sort of take to learning and respecting the culture from up there and what you're teaching as opposed to other Australians?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, we're pretty lucky because they're self-selecting tours. The trips are run in Arnhem Land, small group stuff, and they're going to places that people have had to do a bit of research to look
Yeah,
up.
okay.
So it's a bit self-selecting. They're interesting
already
people,
interested in
and
it,
they're going to be
yeah.
open to new ideas.
Yeah.
But I find international guests are a lot more open to learning new things. It's mostly Australians that have these preconceived ideas. We seem to be a lot more entrenched into a narrative around Aboriginal people, and even those that are interested will get out there and go, oh my God, I knew nothing.
Yeah.
Realise how little we learn, growing up through the education system.
Well, that's exactly right. A lot of it should be, this stuff should be taught in primary schools and high schools.
Yeah, it'd change the country. I mean,
100%.
Even if we at primary school learnt the language of the country we're on. So I learnt Japanese in primary school, which wasn't about learning Japanese. I know a few words, I can count. It's about learning about another culture and just learning that there's other cultures out there. If that language was Ghana language where I grew up, I could then walk out and go, oh, this River Red Gum, here's its local name. Like, I'm not going to be able to speak the language, but
It applies.
I can look around
It applies to your direct area.
In the area, and we could then understand our little patch that we grow up on a bit better and connect with Aboriginal people easier and break those barriers. Because at the moment, there's this huge divide. Most people have ideas of Aboriginal people, but have had no one-on-one experience.
Yeah, no contact, no connection with any of them.
They've seen someone in the park having a drink, or they've seen these things and they build an idea, but never sat and had a yarn, never actually started to go, all right, well, where are you from? What are you doing today? What are you... And the ideas that you might have had before will be broken down and changed instantly if you open that dialogue. That's been my experience around the country and around the world with Indigenous people.
Yep. No, it's amazing what you're doing up there, man. I think it's incredible. Going on a bush tucker. What? Because I love the old bush tucker, man. Les Hiddens and that. I grew up watching that.
Champion.
Malcolm Douglas, all that stuff. And I've seen that you obviously know a lot about bush tucker. What's the nicest bush tucker you've tasted?
Yeah, it's a huge question. The nicest bush tucker I've been lucky to eat.
Or rattle
so
a heap of them out because I'm keen to learn.
1 to 5.
Yeah, top five.
We're in their little shit list here, 1 to 5.
We've been doing that, lady. What's your top 5? What's your top 5 list? We just do it when we're talking shit. What's your top 5 bush tucker list?
You can't go past the easy ones, like I've mentioned magpie geese, oysters off the rocks, mud crabs,
the classics.
They're always going to be delicious, and they're always going to top the list. They're delicious. Barramundi cooked on the hot coals. You can't get better.
Oh, yum.
I mean, all that stuff always... But as far as the more unusual stuff, I love things like mangrove worms, which they're actually a mollusk. So they look like a worm, but they used to be the worms that got into old ships and would just decimate the timber in old ships.
The wood out. Yeah.
But you go into the mangroves and you find the old dead mangroves, and they're these giant worms that are burrowing and eating that rotten wood. And first time I tried one, I didn't like it at all. This old lady's teaching me, we're in the mangroves, up to our waist in mud. Yeah, and I'm eating it, and she goes, oh, next time strip the mud out first. I thought, well, that would have been
what, you eat them raw?
Yeah.
You told me that first.
This giant worm, I've just got mud driven down my mouth. I thought, that would have been a great piece of information before I had it. She's laughing, proper stitch up. But, and then I stripped the mud out and ate it. I thought, it's still, she goes, oh, it's much better cooked as well. I was like, oh, now we're cooking them, are we? And then we boiled it up, and I ate it then, and it was exactly the same, only now it's warm. I thought, this is one that's going to take a bit of... But, you go into classrooms in little remote communities on the Arnhem Coast, and you got kids with Coke bottles full of them, eating them for lunch.
Cool.
And you ask, what's your favourite food? It's like mangrove worm. It's the best. I thought, well, there's got to be something to it. Yeah. And the more I started eating it, it's like an oyster. Like you get a taste for it. And now I absolutely love it.
Awesome, man. Yeah. What else are you rocking?
Big mud mussels in the mangroves, these giant big mollusks.
I think I've seen them. I think they're back.
It's as big as your closed fist. So it's like a cockle or a pippy, but massive, and sits in the mud. Hard to find. Sometimes you just see a lip. Otherwise, you got to
heat them up and they crack open.
Yeah, they pop open and then that's delicious. That's really good. And long bums are another one. A snail. It's a spiraled snail, hence the name long bum. Like the body goes right the way down. Yeah. And when you crack them open, you cook them on the fire. They bubble up. Crack the shell open, pull it out. It's green and purple, so it's pretty wild to look at.
Bit vibrant.
But it tastes like a bit like chewy calamari.
Huh. Oh yeah,
and I mean it's really delicious. I mean the more I've fed that to a few people that sort of looked at it a bit funny and ate and go, actually that's pretty good.
Wow.
So, things like that are always. But as far as bush tucker with plant life, some of the best underground tubers. Yams, for want of a better term. Yams just mean any underground tuber, from a carrot to a potato but some of the long yams in Arnhem Land, absolutely delicious. One of the best feeds I ever had was this huge long yam roasted in the hot coals and then dipped in native bee honey. tiny little stingless tetragonula bees. You go out with the old ladies, they've got these deadly eyes from metres away. They'll spot this tiny black straw coming out of the ground and these minute, smaller than a small fly, flying up and down, and they'll go, oh, there's one. You look and think, oh, all right.
Years of train.
And then you spend an hour digging out this beehive. You've got to pull apart the rock. And you get about maybe a litre of honey at the most. Like they're not nowhere near as big as the hives of the European bees, but the honey's like burnt toffee, this caramel dark.
Underground bees.
Yeah, sometimes in trees as well, in tree hollows. But I've most often found them in the ground. Yeah.
And you wouldn't know how to find it unless you're looking.
You wouldn't
like
see it
that.
in a million years.
It's
Amazing how they've learned this stuff. Yeah.
But that yam, sweet yam, like imagine a sweet potato dipped in bush honey. I was like, this is as good as anything I've ever eaten.
What are the sort of like bush nuts and that kind of natural sort of stuff? What other stuff you love?
In the top end, we've got things like the Kakadu plum, Terminalia ferdinata. It's a small fruit the size of an olive, and it's got a seed inside, much like an olive.
Yep.
It tastes a lot like a plum if you took the sweetness out of a plum. So a lot of the fruits in the bush aren't sweet. There are some notable exceptions that are really sweet and delicious. Yep. But this one's got more vitamin C than any fruit on the planet.
I've seen that on
famously.
I've seen that on the Les Hiddens episode, on one of Bush Tucker's episode. That they're like, why don't they capitalise on that?
Yeah, and nowadays they are. So
epic.
Up in Maningrida, up on the coast of Arnhem Land, you've got Binning and Mungoy, and you've got all Aboriginal people that go out in the bush. They collect it from the wild, and then bring it into these collection centres, Indigenous-owned enterprises, and they then send them into town, $160 a kilo. They dry it into a powder. It's in your smoothies. It goes into face creams. It's in
everything.
I mean, if you start looking around, Kakadu plums in heaps of things, and that's Aboriginal people capitalising on their knowledge and working on country as well, rather than starting a farm where you're trying to grow it. And a lot of those projects end up after a few years when someone loses interest. A whitefellow leaves the community, and these are things that Aboriginal people are doing every day, and using that knowledge.
That is awesome.
Talking about like bees and that sort of shit, I seen that video of yours saying how good mosquitoes and flies and that are for the environment.
For pollination.
Fuck them things.
It's something that people have no idea about.
That's an interesting video too, because I always think, what's the fucking point of mozzies? But I'm that one kind of gets eaten all the time. I hate the fucking things. But that's interesting to know. You can explain to the listeners?
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of time in the top end, obviously, and the mosquitoes are on another level up there. I mean, you get carried away. Man. They're in your eyes. They're more, it's more annoying in your eyes than it is getting bitten. There's that many. It can be thick.
Yeah, right. And sorry to cut in. Where's the worst mozzies you ever seen?
Floodplains. The top end floodplains on the East Alligator River or the Mary River in the top end at night time. Nothing else like it.
Wow.
Yeah, especially in the wet season.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clouds of mosquitoes. You can't have a torch on because you're blinded by it's a blackout of mosquitoes. Oh. So you imagine how, and they're getting you through clothes and. I just got sick of spraying the stuff on me, so I thought I'm just going to see if I can get immune. And I stopped wearing the stuff years ago, and now they still bite me like crazy.
I've heard people do get used to them. I've heard people have been fishing for years, and that they do get used to mozzies.
Yeah, same with midgies, sandflies. I feel them when they're biting me, but
you just take it,
and I don't get that itchy thing afterwards. So going back to what you were saying before, mosquitoes. It's only the females that are harassing you for your blood. They need only one part of their life cycle where they need blood, they need the protein to reproduce. The males and the non-breeding females are pollinators. They're pollinating all the bush flowers. Flies, for example, are the number one pollinators of mango crops. So a lot of mango farms put rotten carcasses of fish and stuff down the roads during the flowering season in the dry season when it's nice and cold nights. And the flies are absolutely the best pollinators. So if you like eating mangoes, you've got flies to thank for that. I know they annoy you.
I love mangoes. Bowen mangoes, love them.
Exactly. Flies are such a big part of it. So, and it's an explosion of protein in the ecosystem too. Like, I mean, everything eats mosquitoes and flies from your birds to all your insectivorous bats. And they have a huge beneficial. So everything has a purpose.
Would you know, like, what is the ultimate sort of mosquito predator? What eats more mosquitoes than anything?
Dragonflies. Yeah, dragonflies are deadly predators, and their kill rate's unbelievable. Like they don't miss. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, things like swifts and swallows are really good for flies.
Yep.
I know some dairy farmers that have put the right eaves in their milking sheds so that the swifts and swallows make their nests underneath, and that's just gotten rid of the fly
Bit of a
problem. If
natural
you've been to a
barrier.
Right.
dairy farm, flies are just through the roof.
Yep.
But they eat so many flies that if you get them to nest and feed there, then that solves your fly problem.
Wow.
Another thing with mosquitoes is microbats. They can eat thousands of mosquitoes a night. And that's easy. Like anyone in suburban Australia could look up the information on how to get a microbat box in your backyard, put it up on a pole, face it the right way. You'll have a colony of small little insectivorous bats. They'll eat thousands of mosquitoes a night, and you've halved the problem of mosquitoes in your backyard while you're having a barbie. And the bats just do their thing, and you can watch them fly out of a night and whatever, but they're not hurting anyone.
Yeah. They're not like the fruit bats that stink it all up and everything.
No, they're not in the same massive colonies as of fruit bats, but yeah.
I wish Australia had a lot more of that sort of self-sustainability sort of ideas like that implemented into everyday culture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you see trees out in parks and that, and you're like, how come they don't just plant like citrus trees or trees that just produce fruit all year round?
You
like,
can just cruise past them.
Yeah, like that. Imagine if that was implemented in like the councils were doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we got so many parks in Australia. It'd be easy to, and they're irrigated as well. They've all got sprinkler systems, so why not plant fruit crops in?
It'd be cool if that stuff was amongst the Australian culture, a lot more self-sustainability.
Yeah, you look at Northern Australia. There's mangoes everywhere. Everyone's front yard. They're half the parks. And what I've always amazed at is you see Australians. Everyone's going to the shop and buying mangoes during the mango season when there are trees full of mangoes on every street corner.
Everywhere. Yeah.
But I tell you, who is getting them? Aboriginal people are. All the African migrants, all the Southeast Asian migrants, they're not silly enough to go to the shop. They're just walking around with bags of mangoes going, what's everyone paying $4 a mango for? Crazy people.
I get really interested by that. Like I took the dogs for a dog walk down Ross River and I seen, he must have been some sort of South Asian fella picking out some sort of plant. It was just like the lilies. He's picking out some sort of lilies and doing something with harvesting something. And I'm just curious, like, what are you doing with that? Like, what are you eating? Like, I get so interested by
the
that
Ross
stuff.
River's a great example.
Yep.
You've got lotus lilies, which have been in Australia for thousands of years now. They have got edible seed pods and they taste like a sweet pea. And you can eat as many of them. I mean, that's delicious. You've got the native lily, the nymphea, the sort of purpley looking lilies. That you can eat the tubers, you can eat the flowers, you can make a bread out of the seed heads. You grind it into a paste and cook it.
Really?
The whole plant's edible and delicious. And then you've got its Latin name's Ipomea aquatica, grows right throughout Northern Australian wetlands and floodplains and creeks. And in Asia, it's called kangkung. You go into a Thai restaurant tonight in Townsville, you'll see kangkung on the menu. It's a water spinach cooked in oyster sauce, one of the best things you'll ever eat.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I've planted it in the backyard up here in Townsville. I've dug a creek bed out, and like a dry creek bed, and when it rains, it fills with water. I planted that. It's taken over the garden, and I can harvest it whenever I want. It's just growing. I don't have to water it at all.
Yeah.
Yep.
So heaps of things we could eat if we just knew what we were looking at.
Yeah, I wish there was a lot more of that, but yeah.
We've spoken heaps about animals, but we haven't got to one of the main ones, crocodiles.
Yeah,
How's
that's
your
a big
sort
one,
of? I can't believe we haven't touched on this yet.
Yeah,
but,
I'm interested in everything, but crocs are the big one.
But like, how'd your love for them come up? And
I remember, since I can remember as a kid, I've been fascinated with reptiles. And my earliest memory is seeing this giant big brown snake, and I was in a fairly safe location, so I could just sit and watch it and just trigger this fascination. I would have been 5 years old. And then, I started to get a bit more mobile and go out bush by myself on the weekends around 10 or 12 and started looking for snakes, looking for lizards. Obviously no crocodiles down there in the south, but, watching things like Steve Irwin or any of those things in Northern Australia where people are living and working with crocodiles, it was just a dream to be up north working with crocodiles. Fast forward to my early 20s, suddenly I'm in Arnhem Land. I'm working with Aboriginal people and working to harvest crocodile eggs for crocodile farms. I've did a couple of years in the wet season working in crocodile farms where day one on the job, I jump in a pen, the door shuts behind me, there's 122-metre saltwater crocodiles, and I've got a hurricane rake, those plastic rakes, and a hose, and 5-minute talk to about what to do and how to clean out these pens. And I'm going, righto. And very quickly you get the hang of which crocodile is going to just sit there and which is going to have a go at you.
A bit more
and some of them, they're running straight at you and you've got to squirt them in the nose with the hose. They don't like that. And hit them on the head with this plastic rake or give them the rake. But just trial by fire. We had some days where we're moving 700 crocodiles in a day. You've got a team of people, you've emptied these pits of water. At another farm I worked at, they were just big holes in the ground and suck all the water out with pumps. And you've got 300 or 400 crocs in these pits, and you're down in the pit in a pair of gumboots, crocodiles all around you. and you're one by one picking them out. They give them a stun, and then you wrap the mouth up with a bit of Velcro, and then move them to another pen. But once you've moved them to another pen, they're awake again, and you got to take that bit of Velcro off and release them.
Oh, that's the tricky bit. Shit.
Yeah, how I didn't get bitten in that. That's
That's unreal.
yeah. I saw some nasty injuries.
What's the scariest situation you've been in? Like,
Crocodile egg harvesting has got to be up there. I mean, I've done a lot of egg harvesting, and that's where farms go out into the wild. There's a quota of eggs that could be collected from the wild from saltwater crocodiles, and then they incubate them in captivity for the purpose of farming. So they also breed in captivity, which is just as scary because you go into a pen in captivity, you've got a fence behind you, you've got a 5.5 metre male croc trying to kill you because you're in his territory. You got a 3 metre female trying to kill you because she's protecting her nest, and you got a fence behind you. There's nowhere to go. Yeah. Terrifying. So many instances where you have these close calls where the only thing stopping you getting chewed is a bamboo pole. You've got a bamboo pole, and you're keeping this crocodile away, and you're protecting the guy on the nest. Because when you're harvesting eggs, the guy in the nest has got to be careful. He's really carefully separating all of the organic matter, pulling out the eggs. Then you've got to mark the top, because if you turn the egg, the yolk will crush the embryo. It's infertile. Okay. Right. So he's got to really pay attention to what he's doing and quickly but carefully mark the top and put them in the esky the way they were laid.
Wow.
And trusting you on the bamboo pole as this crocodile's trying to
keep watch.
To keep him safe, you know.
Yeah.
with a bamboo pole.
Yeah.
That's it, with the bamboo pole.
Man.
And in the wild, you're doing it with helicopters. These crazy mustering pilots, it's scarier being up in the chopper. These guys are low-level flying between trees, spotting nests from the air, then you jump out of the helicopter and walk in. You've got nothing. You're in the swamps up to your knees or sometimes up to your waist in water. You don't know where the crocodile is. You've got a floating mound of organic matter, and she'll often dig a big hole next to it. She's usually in that, but a few times, she comes from a different direction, and you go, shit, and it's so close. But
Jesus.
Amazingly, no one's been seriously hurt crocodile egg harvesting from a crocodile.
Yeah,
Famously, there was a helicopter crash a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
but which was he was a good fella.
Yeah,
but,
I thought it was amazing.
No one's been killed.
What is the actual latest on that?
That's
I haven't even
nuts.
followed whatever happened with that.
It's still going through the courts. I think.
Fair enough.
Someone does a bit of jail time.
He was a legend for the country and the stuff he was doing. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, they'd been doing it a long time. They'd been harvesting crocodile eggs for a farm I worked at. Lagoon crocodile farm there. Got 40,000 crocs on farm.
So when you have these croc farms, what exactly are they? What are they doing with the crocodiles?
The big money is skins.
And the skins for everything.
Louis Vuitton and Hermes handbags. So Louis Vuitton and Hermes actually own the parks, the farms now in the top end.
Really?
It worked well. So these entrepreneurs in Darwin, businessmen, had made a bit of money out of crocodile farming, got them up and running. Then Hermes and Louis Vuitton come in and say, we'll buy it off you. Big money, so they get a big payout to sell the farm, and then they also get employed to continue managing them. So it worked out for the people that own the farms, the fellas in Darwin, and then Louis Vuitton and Hermes can get skins straight into an Italian handbag for $70,000.
Holy shit.
Stupid money.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Is it also good to sort of keep the numbers down as well?
Well,
do they think about that at all, or they don't give a fuck?
when we put in crocodile farming as an idea in the 70s, we protected crocs in the 70s. Before that, crocodiles had been shot at to near extinction. There was as little as 4,000 crocs in Northern Australia.
Really?
So that's right on the brink of collapse, like couldn't have come back. And they realised that they'd shot them out of to near extinction. So if we protect them in the wild and you farm them in captivity and you create this industry around crocodiles, it's conservation through commerce. No one's going to go out in the wild and shoot a crocodile for a beaten up skin from a wild croc when you're getting these perfect skins in captivity.
Yeah,
and now crocodiles are back in their pre-hunting numbers. So they're throughout most of Northern Australia, they're back up. Once you get down to sort of northern Queensland around where we are now, Townsville and around here, the crocodiles are nowhere near as much as they used to be because there's heaps of people.
So what's your stance on, like, say, the bobcatter? But let me get you right now. Remember that little funny transition he does?
He's
Talking about
crazy dude.
Talking about
I think we've got to remember that we've got this. We've figured it out. We figured out the crocodile management in Australia. Places like Darwin, you've got 250 crocs a year taken out of Darwin Harbour, and so people say we need to cull crocodiles. We do cull crocodiles. We cull tens of thousands of crocodiles a year. Every cattle station in Northern Australia, if they've got problem crocs, can take 6 or 12 crocs out of the system a year.
Okay. Yep.
In places where there's people like Townsville, Cairns, hundreds of crocodiles are removed a year out of areas where there's lots of people. Outside of those areas, we protect crocs and educate people.
Yeah.
It is really difficult to get eaten by a crocodile. You have to do something stupid. I've lived around crocodiles for decades now, and I've never had a close call apart from egg harvesting and those crazy things.
Yeah.
But normal people aren't doing that.
No, exactly. No one's going anywhere near a crocodile
No,
nest.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
They're not nesting on the main street of the town, you know. But they live in the water. We live on land. You just stand a couple of metres back from the water and you're safe as houses. It's so simple.
If you can't see the bottom, don't swim.
Yeah.
You can still fish. You can still use the water. You just got to understand there's crocs in the water. We're lucky to have them. You know, in most of the world, it'd be great to swim in the beaches in Northern Australia. But if you want to go and swim in tropical beaches where they used to have crocodiles, go to Bali, go to Thailand. And you might say, yeah, but there's too many people.
Yeah.
They killed all the crocodiles. There's heaps of people. Northern Australia, we have crocodiles, we have jellyfish, but we have these pristine, remote, the wildest places left on the earth. And crocodiles are a big part of that. We've still got our apex predators in their natural abundance.
Dinosaurs,
We're lucky to have it. Otherwise, we'll be like everywhere else in the world where there's just full of people and you can dive and swim anywhere you like. But, you know, it's not wild anymore.
Hey, I've never thought about that, eh? Like if you fucking didn't have certain things like that, it'd just be...
You'd have every man and his dog.
Yeah. Imagine if you could just swim anywhere in Northern Australia and, I mean, people would be diving every reef. And, you know, the crocodiles are protecting the reefs from overfishing. It's a whole system. But as I said, we're lucky to have it. There's very few places left in the world as wild.
When we go into like some of the remote places, do you have a little special place in your heart in Australia that like you put for your, you know, your favourite kind of place? You don't have to share it. Like, don't have to be a secret spot.
No,
give me a secret spot.
No
mate.
secrets.
But you know what I'm saying?
Coburg Peninsula, so up in Western Arnhem Land, it's almost as far north as Cape York. It's only 40 kilometres.
So where is that in relation to like Nullumboy or Nullumboy?
Arnhem Land is 100,000 square kilometres of land, so it's massive. I mean,
or Gove. You know the Gove.
So the Gove Peninsula is on the eastern side of Arnhem Land. And the Coburg Peninsula is on the far western side. The opposite side of Arnhem Land. Over 800 kilometres away from the north.
So that whole Arnhem Land takes up that whole cap of the territory, right?
Yeah, from the Gulf of Carpentaria to the border of Kakadu.
Yeah, that's monstrous.
Huge. Coburg Peninsula, I mean, to get there from Darwin, it's an 8-hour drive through the bush on bush tracks. And it's a marine park and a national park inside Arnhem Land, so you couldn't get more pristine. The fishing is extraordinary. Wow. It's just the land that time forgot. There was more people in Coburg Peninsula in 1838 than there is today.
Really?
Wow. The British settled there. It was the third attempt at having a crack at settling Northern Australia. Set up this amazing settlement called Victoria Settlement. It lasted 11 years. The story on that is, I could do a whole podcast on that. It's called the Forsaken Settlement.
Yeah, right.
Just 11 years of malaria, malnutrition, the most remote settlement in the entire British Empire. And then you had thousands and thousands of Arakbi, Aboriginal people on the peninsula. Today, the Arakbi have been moved off onto an island called Croker Island. The missions forcibly moved everyone off. The British failed, so there's no settlements on the Coburg Peninsula, no major townships. So there's less people in that part of Australia now than there was a couple hundred years ago.
Unreal.
So it's a wild place, and everyone should get up and see Coburg. Everybody does Cape York. Beautiful place to see, but it's a bit of a highway now. You know,
of course.
Every man and his dog up there. Go to Coburg. It's pristine, remote.
And you can just access that. You don't need to get permission going in.
You need permits, but because it's a national park and there's a campground, you get your camp permit. It's a couple $100 bucks for 14 days, and that's for the whole car. So you've got a family, a couple $100 bucks for a couple of days for a couple of weeks camping. And that includes all your transit permits through Western Arnhem Land. So the drive through Western Arnhem Land, you cross the infamous Car Hills crossing.
So that's where you access it from? You go to, because I've been to Cales.
That's the border of Western Arnhem Land.
You just keep on going.
That's the border of the Kakadu side where you would have been, and once you cross there, that's Arnhem Land. You drive through Western Arnhem Land, past the township of Gunbalanya, 800 people. It's the biggest township in the west of Arnhem Land, and then you drive another 4 hours from there through the bush, through real rough dirt tracks.
I need a decent rig, eh?
Yeah,
what rig are you rocking up there?
We drive 200 series.
200 series?
Yeah, with big off-road trailers. So we have 6 guests in a 200 series.
Yeah,
and
right. Yep.
It's a bit snug, but
pile them in.
Very comfortable vehicles. They're high-end to us, so we look after people when we're getting out all the time.
Yeah, that's epic.
And so
Cales as well, eh?
There's nowhere else in the world like it.
Man, it's insane. But from the most recent videos I've seen, like all the boulders, all those boulders along the causeway, were they always there?
Yeah,
Because when I went there, we went there specifically when the tide changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have seen the boulders because the tide was too high. It's 80 kilometres from the coast, Cales Crossing.
Yeah.
And we get 7+ metre tides in the top end. So even...
Which spun me out. The tide's up there. How much, like you're 100K inland and the tide's still affecting you?
The tide's pushing in at pace.
Yeah.
100 kilometres inland.
That tripped me out, yeah.
And you get, 2 metres of tidal movement even that far inland.
That's insane.
So the tide pushes in the late dry season in particular. The diamond scale mullet and the barramundi are pushing upstream with the tide. They hit that causeway and then the water banks up. They flood over. You've got this concentration of fish in one area. And then so the crocodiles, they know that this time of the year, there's fish everywhere and you'll get 50 big crocs all putting their differences aside, sitting there. They do this amazing thing there where they put their fingers out of the water. It's one of the only places you'll see this type of feeding. And they use their vibratory pits down their arms and down their snout to pick up the vibrations in that really murky, muddy water. They sit there, and as soon as a fish comes within biting distance, they'll turn their head and split second we'll have a feed.
Busted.
And when you see it going off, you can smell the oil of fish in the air. It's so strong. It's like sniffing a can of fish oil or tuna oil. There's 3 or 4 crocs at a time with fish in their mouth. It's just
a big frenzy, feeding frenzy.
We got it one day. We were filming a TV show for BCF with the honey badger. Nick, and we just got it perfect. The tide was flowing over. We could cross back and forward to get all the great footage. And crocodiles are just eating fish.
So usually there wouldn't be that many crocs in the wild at one go.
So they're territorial.
Yeah.
The only reason you have that many crocs in one place is if, it's maybe the end of the dry season and there's no water left and they have no choice but to put up with it.
Or there's just so much food.
There's an abundance of food in one spot and they'll go, well, there's no point fighting because there's food for everyone.
Yeah. And how was that filming with Honey Badger?
Yeah, it's great. Nick, I've known Nick for a while now. We filmed a beer ad years ago. And
with the Northern?
Iron Jack.
Oh, Iron Jack.
It was for Iron, when that first came out.
Yeah.
Pretty ordinary beer, but it was.
I'll agree.
We got the gig of filming this beer ad, so we got paid 20 grand. They gave us to fly around in helicopters and scout locations, and we're just going, this is a dream. We get the gig. We film from Coburg Peninsula out into the Kimberley. 4 lads finding the most remote bar in Australia, and they actually did it. They dropped them off on a plane, had no idea where they were, had a 4-wheel drive set up with some swags on the roof and a tinny. And they had to get from A to B, and each one of them were known for something else. So Nick was obviously the honey badger's known for his yarns and morale. He kept up morale.
Yeah.
At the end, we get to this phenomenal bit of country called Buller River Station on the edge of the Kimberley, and I'm flying up in a helicopter with a set designer. We get dropped off 45 minutes away from the nearest person in the most remote bit of escarpment. We couldn't even land the chopper on this escarpment. It was too rough, so I had to jump out the helicopter. and then he's gone away, and he go, I see you back in an hour. And so we're sitting there, 40 degrees, looking over the Victoria River, the most extraordinary view I've ever seen. Going,
that's cool.
Look at where we are. An hour comes past, and the chopper comes back, and underneath the chopper, he's got on the sling, he's got a massive esky of block ice, a keg of ice cold beer, and everything we need to set up this bar. So we me and this fella put together this bar, drilled it together. I filmed it as a time lapse and, put together the bar, put the keg in, put ice around it and wet towels. And then we looked at the clock. We're in the most remote place I've ever been with a bar in front of us with a couple of taps. And we look at the watch, go, well, he's not due back for another 45 minutes. Be rude not to give it a go.
Let's start the
and we're sitting there pulling pints of beer, laughing our head off. I mean, I said it, it's not my favourite beer, but I've never had a better beer than that one.
Yeah, true. The setting of it.
Yeah, would have tasted good in that setting.
Oh, my goodness. I'll be chasing that for the rest of my life. I'll never have a better beer.
That is awesome. Yeah.
But I've been lucky to do a lot of filming stuff like that where it's so much fun, just you and a group of lads out in the bush filming something fun.
Could lead on to a question that I have been keen on is the high ground. Filming of high ground. How did that come about?
That was extraordinary. Because
I went to Arena Cinemas. I remember when that came out and watched it. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
It's a great film. It's on Netflix at the moment too, so anyone can see it on Netflix.
Because I actually wanted to redeem it with the missus.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Simon Baker, the lead, and it had Jack Thompson, Australian legend.
Good actors.
Amazing actors, and it was a great. So they were putting it together. They were flying around Arnhem Land, finding Aboriginal actors to fill all these roles. And someone contacted me. They'd seen a few videos I did on the internet or whatever on Instagram and said, we really want you. We've got a role in mind. Could you come and audition? So I was at work at the time in Kakadu National Park and went into this little donga, and they've set up a camera and gone, all right, now we've seen you online and, you know, you've got this amazing understanding of Aboriginal people, but we want to prove that you can be real racist. Like this movie, it's a frontier violence film. So me as a white fellow, I'm playing a nasty role. So I had to walk in, and old man that I'd talked to, I've known this old fella for a long time, Witiana Marika. He's an old lawman. He was in Yothu Yindi famously. Amazing old man. And he's in the room watching me, and they've given me a remote controller for the TV. I've got to pretend it's a gun. I've got to walk in and just say the most vicious, violent stuff about.
Oh man! Did they give you lines, or you had to make it up?
I had to make it up on the even worse. Yeah. Anyway, I must have done a good job because I got the role. And then next minute, I'm in this film where, you know, we've got all this training with weapons, and I've got this lever action. All the guns they use in films are all real guns. They just use blank rounds. Really? So the armourer. This guy's job is to have every gun you've ever heard of, from a cannon to a revolver, throughout every historic period. And he opens his van, and you just every gun you've have and
they're like real historic guns.
Yeah, they're all real weapons. He keeps them perfect. And you're loading when you're practicing. It's obviously clear, but then once you go to shoot, they put live rounds in, just blanks. So you're shooting. That's I mean, it can be dangerous because anything in that barrel is still coming out.
Yeah. Well, that's happened on a few movie sets, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Bruce Lee's son, Brendan Lee.
Yeah.
And the more recently one, was it Alec Baldwin?
Alec Baldwin. Yeah, that happened just after we'd filmed. And you never point a loaded gun at anyone, regardless of whether it's a blank round or not. So in the films, it looks like they're being pointed, but the camera angles, you're actually leading. So there I am. I'm the first scene I had to do in this high ground film. They'd set up this paperbark shelter, and the idea is there's a mum and a baby crying in the shelter, and I've gone off script, and I'm just a mongrel policeman, and I'm shooting anyone I can. So I had to shoot the baby.
Fuck.
And I've gone into this paperbark shelter, and they go, all right, first scene I've ever been in a film. You only got one crack at this. No pressure, but they set up what's called squibs. So these 3 explosions, and I've got to lever action, pull the trigger, make it all look real, and I've got to pull the trigger at the exact moment that they set off these explosions.
Oh, man.
And I've got to have the look of being, you know, like, I'm going to kill this baby, and then being real happy once I've done it. You know, no pressure, but action. You rock up, bang, 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 and the baby stops crying. And then I've got to be real happy about this and go, and then go off and kill other people. I got it right first time, and at the end, I had a couple of lines in the film.
You'd have been puckering or what? A lot of pressure.
It's a great adrenaline rush. Though.
And just to put yourself in that mindset where you have to sort of play that part, and then like, especially after with all your love for them people and stuff, that would have been tough.
Yeah, the hard thing was we filmed a lot of it in Kakadu National Park. And we're talking to the traditional owner there, old Bessie, and she's saying, you know, this is quite sad for us because we grew up knowing just around the corner was a massacre.
That's right.
Where hundreds of people were killed. So, you know, for Aboriginal people, this is recent history. In Arnhem Land, this is in the 1930s and 40s. We're talking like yesterday. The way they pass on oral knowledge as well, it's, you know, it would be like talking about a massacre where your whole family, your grandfather and were involved. So it was pretty traumatic for everyone. But at the end of the day, everyone, after you film and you shoot someone and they fly back and they get up afterwards and you have a laugh, and, you know, I've been adopted into that kinship system. So everyone I'm working with there, all of the Aboriginal actors were family. You know, we're all related in some way. So
that's awesome.
It was much harder watching it back. Watching it back and going, wow, there I am. It looks so real when you see it back. And that's a bit more confronting. It sort of took a moment. I had to have a few pints of beer and go,
suck it up.
But, great experience.
That's
it's
cool,
an important story.
And it's a good movie.
Everyone should check it out. It's an epic film.
Head over to Netflix, give it a watch.
Little plug. I'm actually going to watch it. I was thinking about it this morning, and I was like, fuck, I wonder what it's on. I wonder if it's on Stan or Netflix. I got Netflix, Black and Bob's Young. I'll watch it tonight, mate. I'll look out for you.
I'm dead in the first 10 minutes, so I didn't get a roll through the whole film, but who knows? Could lead on to other things.
I was going to say, any other things coming up off the back of that?
Yeah, well, there's some talk about it, other movies in the works that I might get a role in, but awesome. In the early stages. And at the moment, I'm organising a TV show. Can't talk too much about it because it's still in production phase and trying to get the money for it or whatever. But it's for the UK audience, and it's a great concept, that one. It's sort of bit of reality TV, and they've got me on board to plan the itinerary and
Cool. Actually, that comes on to one question I did have in mind. Would you ever go on the reality TV show alone? Reckon you'd ever give that a crack?
Everybody always asks me this question.
You have been, yeah. Okay,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And my answer is very quickly no, because it is always filmed somewhere very cold. And I would be dead in about 8 minutes.
100%.
I hate the cold.
They did it in Tasmania.
If you filmed alone up in the top end and you put someone like myself or a couple of other
it'd go
fellas
for like
that
6
knew
months.
Yep, you'd be there 3 years
That's
later.
why I knew when they did the Australian season, I was like, I was so excited because I love it. I love that sort of stuff. And then they did Tasmania. I was like, I know why they're doing this.
They always put them somewhere freezing cold with hardly any food.
Exactly.
And how long can you last in those extreme conditions?
Yep.
Because in the tropics, it's hot, so you got to find water, but there's water everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's huge wet
An
season
abundance
rains.
of other stuff.
Yeah.
You learn how to tap a tree. Paper bucks pour out with water. You got
you got
dig a hole in the
everything you
sand at the right place. You got fresh water
catch
pumping
food,
out.
catch fish,
Food everywhere.
everything. Yeah,
Okay. There's a mud crab walking
I remember
along.
watching. Do you ever watch Les Stroud back in the day, Survivor Man? And he did an
Yeah.
episode where he used to go out and do a week by himself, film everything. And he did one on the Pacific Islands. And at the end of it, he was like, "I really enjoyed this. I could do another week." You know what I mean? It's like if you're in a place that has abundance for food, happy days.
Yeah, I mean, you just build a little shelter and spend all day out
You're right.
looking for
They
food.
do. You're exactly right.
Nothing
they do it
better.
somewhere. They do it somewhere where they want people to suffer and drop like flies, so the season doesn't go on forever.
But it is impressive. Like the people they have on that show, they extraordinary survival.
Well, that one fellow that did, he replicated. He built that dugout canoe, Outback Mike.
Yeah,
He built that dugout canoe and replicated the story that I've spoken about on this podcast. Remember James Morals, the guy who lived here locally? Have you ever heard the story of James Morals?
No.
I don't want to elaborate it, but I reckon personally,
I'll look it
you'd
up,
love the
yeah.
story. He's a dude who basically they shipwrecked between New Zealand and Australia, made a makeshift raft, sailed for 42 days and come across Kungala here.
Wow.
And he lived with the indigenous locals, like the Bindle. He floated between a few Walgarooka and the Bindle, but he lived here for 17 years with the locals.
Oh,
and
extraordinary.
Outback Mike was actually like his whole plan to go from, he went with the dugout canoe, he went from here in Townsville all the way up to the Cape, and his, like the little story he had for his expedition was, at that time, James Morals could have made a canoe and gone to a telegraph post up on the Cape York if he wanted to try and, save himself.
Yeah.
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 It's pretty awesome. I followed that little journey of his he did. It was pretty epic.
The other extraordinary story from over the east coast here is the French dude shipwrecked.
Yep, that was amazing. I heard
Lived
about
with
that
Aboriginal
one.
people
And
up
there
in
was-
the, I think it's the Daintree, but
He went back to France with like big scarification or stretches. I
Yeah.
think, and then people were like, "Whoa, what happened to you?"
he died a sad man because he'd had that experience where coming from Europe in that stage, there's too many people, there's disease everywhere, the poor have nothing, the rich have everything, and then all of a sudden you're living with Aboriginal people, you're living with this abundance, this great system where everyone's looking after each other,
Yep.
family. He was then, in inverted commas, rescued. He didn't want to go. He was tricked into leaving.
Yeah.
He spent his whole life trying to get back to his family.
Really?
Family, as in the indigenous family that have adopted him in. And he said, just the life I'm leaving in France is abysmal compared to
Yeah.
the life I've left
Yep.
there, lived there. Just a much better, in that period,
how
Aboriginal
huge-
people were living much better than Europeans.
how
Europeans were
huge it
tiny
is.
little fellas that were
Yep.
dying of syphilis and
Yep.
sewage through the streets. Meanwhile, Aboriginal people are 6.5 foot tall and
Athletic as
Athletic,
well. Just,
strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was another one, Barbara Flower, I think it was something like that her name was, and she was a same thing, shipwreck up in Torres Strait Island. She lived in Torres Strait for I don't know how many years, but that's another amazing story. There's been a
love
few. I love them stories. There's another fellow, William Buckley, I think his name was, and he lived in Victoria with the Indigenous for 32 years.
famously where the term Buckley's chance comes from.
Yeah. And he was like a 6'6" ranger. I remember. I just remember like
That sounds familiar.
yeah, but I just remember thinking, man, you would have stood out like the Indigenous would have looked at you like, what the fuck? Look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love those stories.
imagine seeing red hair.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been.
Yeah, I know in the
completely
Middle
spun
East when they came across, people like the Bedouin or the indigenous people in North Africa and certainly during the time of Islam,
Yep.
when they saw redheads, they thought that it was the Prophet Muhammad famously had red hair, but no one had ever seen anyone with red hair. So they thought the people with red hair were somehow holy. And
There you go.
but,
But do you
yeah.
know what's a spin out? Some of them, like you see some of the Maoris with it too, but there's certain DNA, I think only in Micronesian people, where they have the blonde hair.
Yeah.
They have that real blonde hair.
Yeah.
You see with some of the desert mob, a lot of the kids, they spend a lot of time in the sun and you get
Yeah,
this
it
sort
goes
of
real
bully-
light.
That looks cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon it looks cool as.
Yep, you don't see it in Northern Australia, but I mean, I don't think a lot of people realise there isn't such thing as Aboriginal people in Australia. It's over 350 completely different groups of people that believe different things, speak completely different languages.
Yep.
You can't make any comparison to the mob in the north and the mob in the desert.
Yeah.
100%. And it can be a different language, like you're saying, like from an hour away, it can be a completely different language.
As different as Russian is to German, like completely different. Traveling through Arnhem Land, I'm struck with that all the time. Like you spend all this time learning language, you drive an hour down the road, and they go, "Oh yeah, we understand that language, but that's not our language. We speak a different one." You go, "All right, start again."
What's the coolest or like craziest fact or like story that you reckon that would just blow people's mind about the whole systems and everything?
About Indigenous knowledge systems.
Or any
a couple that
stories,
a couple that seem to really blow people's mind, going into the depth of history of that Macassan Aboriginal trade, where, as I was mentioning before, 1,000 years before Europeans, Indonesians are trading with Aboriginal people, and Aboriginal people had set up these trade systems where goods went from Northern Australia to China, and goods from China come into Northern. You go down that rabbit hole, and it blows people's mind because it's
definitely.
so different. But the big one that really I talk about it with every tourist is explaining the kinship system.
Yeah.
So I can go into a bit of detail if you like. It's the most complicated kinship system in the world, and it divides everything into a division of two. So Aboriginal people see the world, everything is one of two moieties, and moieties is an anthropological word. It just means division of two, like yin yang would be moieties. But I'll use the language names for Arnhem Land. It's different everywhere in the country, but everything's split into Yirritja and Dua. So every type of plant is either Yirritja or Dua. Every type of rock is either Yirritja or Dua. An example with animals, the white cockatoo with the sulphur crest, he's a Yirritja bird. The red-tailed black cockatoo is Dua.
That's my totem, yeah.
But with people, you're either Yirritja or Dua as well. So each individual person has a moiety, and you take that from your father. So if your father's Yirritja, you're Yirritja. If your father's Dua, you're Dua.
Yeah.
Within those two moieties, in total, there's 16 skin names. For Yirritja, there's 4 male skin names and then 4 female equivalent skin names. So 8 there. And then same with Dua, 4 male, 4 female. So Yirritja and Dua, 16 skin names in total. You take your skin name from your mother. So if your father's Dua, you're Dua. Your mother will always be the opposite moiety, Yirritja. I'll explain why in a second. But whatever skin name she is, obviously the female equivalent, imagine these male and female 4 generational cycles around in a circle. Whatever skin name she is, you're the next one around. If you're a male, you're the male. If you're a female, you're the female. That dictates all of your relationships. So I've been adopted into the system. I'm Balang skin. My moiety's Dua. And anyone I come through, anywhere in Australia that has connection to that system, even if they use different language words for the skin names and moieties, we'll figure it out, the comparison. If they're Dua and they're Balang, my skin, we're brothers.
Oh,
Anyone with my female equivalent skin name is my sister.
Yeah, okay.
So all my blood sisters would be blood sisters. I mean, they're going to have the female equivalent, but I could go 1,000 kilometres, or any Aboriginal people could go 1,000 kilometres to somewhere they've never been and find someone with no blood relation whatsoever. They're their sister, and that's an avoidance relationship. You can't speak to them. You play with each other as a kid, but once you get up to an age, you stop speaking to each other. You still have a really close connection. Like if you've caught a heap of fish, for example, and you're going into Darwin and you want to tell your sister that she can eat that fish, you'd yell to someone across the street, "Hey, that fish in the fridge, make sure my sister knows." And you're just bouncing the message off because you can't directly speak.
Yeah, right.
But every skin name as well, so with me, Balang, has an opposite moiety skin name they can marry.
Yeah.
So you have all these avoidance relationships with poison cousins, brothers and sisters, but you also have promised wives and right skin marriages where the only people you can marry is one of 2 skin names on the opposite moiety. That's why your mum and dad are always opposite moieties. So I would Balang marries Nangarij. Nangarij, I think it is. That would be the female. And then already before I've even found someone, I know that's going to be my wife's skin. Thousands of people I could choose from, but it has to be that skin. And we know what our kid's skin name will be. And it goes around in a 4-generational system. And if you get over 4 generations, you can have a new baby born that's the grandmother of mother or grandmother of, it's what we would say, great-grandmother.
Wow.
And even the funniest story, I was holding this little puppy dog once in northeast Arnhem Land, and I'm holding this beautiful little puppy, and the old lady goes, that's your ngapipi, meaning uncle. So I'm holding this little puppy, dogs are family. Dogs have skin name as well. So I'm holding this
That's
tiny puppy. That's
cool.
my uncle.
Wow. So the dogs have skin names as well.
Yeah.
That is sick.
It's,
that is awesome.
It's so phenomenally complicated. And people go, it stops inbreeding. Yeah, it does. It means that you're not brothers and sisters and cousins. But what it does, in a much more sophisticated sense, is it means that Aboriginal Australians
Connects everyone.
have the strongest genetic diversity of any group of people in the world, meaning genetic disease doesn't pass on.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
but in Europe, the royal family thought it was a great idea for brothers and sisters and all
Fucking
sorts of things.
filthy.
happen.
Yeah.
The opposite to that is Aboriginal Australians that have this ridiculously broad genetic diversity for a group of people of, several million landlocked people.
Yeah.
And no one else in the world figured out quite a sophisticated system. So that's a fact that when you explain it in that much detail, not everyone's going to be able to.
You know what we need? It would be
Yeah.
great if there was like
Visual diagrams.
You need it.
What do you call it?
Yep.
Fucking
Yeah, just get some sort of visual diagram over the top.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is awesome. Thanks for sharing that, man. I did not know much about that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like we're going back to before. I honestly think like the EQ system needs to be changed up. I wish this stuff was taught in primary schools and high schools. You know?
that's-
I mean, the more we know, the more people at the moment seem to be talking about recognising Aboriginal people and Aboriginal people having a flag and all this sort of thing, creating divide.
Yeah.
A lot of the right
Yeah.
seems to be pushing the idea that we're all one country and one people, and having two flags is divisive. But how can it be divisive?
Yep.
Recognising different cultural
Yeah, I know,
ideas, and I mean that's the
It's
best thing
inclusive.
about.
It's the opposite.
About Australia is we're a country full of diversity.
Yep.
The classic line in the song, "We are one, but we are many."
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Recognizing that diversity and allowing people their own identity,
Yep.
it can't be wrong. I
100%,
don't understand how that can be divisive.
Yeah.
But
like that's
No.
amazing.
That's really good knowledge.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
That's I've heard
I want-
a little bit of that, like the systems
Yep.
and stuff, but that's crazy to actually go into that much depth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
it's,
probably just
yeah,
the tip of
that's
the iceberg,
cool.
right? Because then there's song
That's
lines
cool.
and there's like so much more.
absolutely,
depth
there's
about it, right?
there's a whole other layer of kinship which is even more complicated and can't be explained in English
Yeah.
words. You need to learn language to understand it. That's even more sophisticated, and that's more relating to who's blood related to who. But I sat with this old man once in Central Arnhem Land, and he was with anthropologists, and they were doing their family tree. So for you and I to do our family tree, we could maybe get 50 people, or we'd go back a couple of generations. He had over 1,000 people from
Wow.
different communities, and he knew how everyone was related in this 16 skin name system, all these interconnecting web of relationships. But then he went back more generations than he could ever remember,
Yeah.
because the knowledge has been passed down. So you've got this family tree of thousands of individual people that he's drawn on this map of who's related to who through this kinship.
That's incredible.
How anyone can store that much information in one brain is
Yep. That's one of my favorite. Like I really love that about Indigenous cultures, the love they have for families. Where I feel like in white culture, a lot of families are so disconnected. People don't even know past their grandparents.
yeah.
Where in Indigenous there's a lot more love for family, and
Yeah, it gives
Yeah.
you it gives Aboriginal people that deep sense of place when you know that you've been
community.
your ancestors have been on country for thousands of generations. There's no question of where you're from. You know exactly where you're from, and you're not from Australia. You're from this country, this specific part. That's where you can trace your ancestry back for. If I look back 100 generations, I'm lost. I mean, I know my ancestors come from Ireland.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
I've lost that connection
Yep.
with that ancestral heritage, and
Yeah.
so I find a lot of European Australians, we've lost that sense of place. So the only identity they have is Australian, which is fine, and that's valid too. Like no one should ever put down someone's sense of identity, because that's going to cause huge animosity. But understand that a sense of identity for a white Australian is very different than a sense of identity for
That's right.
a countryman.
No, awesome. Appreciate fucking some of the stories you've
Yeah,
shared, man.
it's
That's
awesome,
we
man.
could, like you say, there's certain topics we could probably do a whole podcast on, but we
like-
don't want to take up too much.
Yeah,
of
we
your
just
time.
realised how
You're
long it's
busy
been going for.
man.
This podcast, this could be like a
This-
full Joe Rogan 3-hour podcast.
Yeah,
This I'm only just
easy.
getting warmed up now.
Well, I'm happy to come back another time and have another yarn.
But yeah, we
awesome,
get to
bro.
roll into the guest questions.
We got some guest questions here. We'll roll into, and then we'll wrap it up.
Who is your favourite athlete of all time?
I thought a bit about this question, and to have a favourite athlete, it's got to have someone that you really idolise. And I thought, idolise an athlete. And then I thought, hang on, who have I Googled more and watched more YouTube videos of? And without a doubt, Shane Warne.
Shane Warne.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're the first who said that. That's awesome.
I've watched so many Shane Warne videos, the best of Shane Warne.
Yep.
Just someone who is so much better at doing what they do than anyone else has ever been. No one will ever be able to turn the ball like that.
He was a boss, eh?
Crazy, yeah, because it's like how many people do that same thing.
And he
but they
went
can't
around
do
the
it,
world
like-
training the world's best spinners.
Yeah.
He went with the Indian cricket team. And
No one's even come close. Who would be the closest to him? Malinga the Slinger used to spin it a fair bit, but I don't even know if no one's really in his level, eh?
Nah, I mean it was a special sort of, and so that's exciting to watch.
Yeah, yep.
And maybe we're seeing that again at the moment with someone like Jasprit Bumrah, who's maybe the best pace bowler, and just his arms doing something crazy that some genetic defect that he's making work for him.
But, this could go anywhere. This question: if you could only eat one type of food for the rest of your life, what would it
I'm
be?
curious for this one.
I mean, an impossible question. It would be torture for me being only
Haven't eaten. You eat so many different things.
Exactly.
It's
Plus
not
you're a
like
chef, so that's probably
Yeah, I mean, I love food. It is everything to me. But I'm never happier than when I'm sitting on a beach cooking up mud crabs, putting a barramundi on the coals, cooking up some cockles.
How you doing
in
the
a pasta.
barramundi on the coals? You wrapping it in anything or just
No,
straight on
the coals.
Yep.
You burn the skin
Yep.
until it blisters and blackens.
Yep.
And then when you peel back that blistered skin
Yep.
and all the scales, you've got smoked, steamed meat.
Nice.
It is the best piece of fish you'll ever have.
Awesome. Yep.
Even if you get a real dirty freshwater barramundi,
Yeah, really.
the fish that everyone goes, when they're real
Yeah.
dark colour,
Yep.
cook it like that, bit of salt, it's like smoked fish. It's delicious.
unreal.
So what,
really
just
good.
scale it, leave the skin on, and then put it on.
No,
leave-
don't
leave the
Just-
scales.
Just peel the scale
Yeah.
back as
Just
you peel
chuck
the
it
skin
on.
back.
Yeah, so you blister all
But you
those
want the coals
scales.
pretty low. You wouldn't want the
If you
coals
can't do it
rare
in a hot coals, do it in your oven. Get a fish, take the guts out, leave the scales on, and turn your oven up to as hot as it goes.
Yeah,
Absolute cranking, just on a tray. And cook it until the skin is burnt.
Yeah.
And then take it out, peel that skin back. The meat is perfect.
got everything to go, okay.
But seafood, I'm never happier than if I'm eating seafood. So,
Yep.
What's
Yeah, I
the
love
most
seafood.
awkward or shittest situation you've been in?
I always think about this one tour where I'd driven from 4 a.m. I'd driven through the bush to meet these guests at 9 a.m. or whatever, and I've rocked up in the hours from anywhere in a bush airstrip. The plane's landed. Husband and wife get out. She's done up to the nines. He's wearing his R.M. Williams boots and super money tour. I knew it was a wealthy tour. We've got
Trying to
helicopter
look the part,
flights.
eh?
Yeah.
They've walked out of the plane and she's just going off her head. Why the fuck have you brought me here? Like, what made you think I'd enjoy this? We haven't done anything. Like, I've just met. I've got them for 7 days. We've got this trip through the bush. Hop in the car. It's a 45-minute drive to our camp through the bush. So she's just getting more and more wild in the car. It's going, where the hell are we going? And I'm trying to point out things. We go down the bush track. There's a frilly on the track. I jump out, catch this frill-neck lizard, brought it in the car, and it was like a turning point. She's just amazed by...
Won her over.
Oh, cool.
We hit the
really?
coast and she sees our camp. It's beautiful coastal camp, Coburg Coastal Camp up in Arnhem Land, venture north of mob I work for. And I was able to slowly bring her around. Turned out to be an amazing tour. She was a
that's
legend.
cool.
She was just... what started off was the most awkward
You were thinking, fuck, I've got
situation.
7 days of this shit.
Imagine to turn her around.
Fuck,
and,
that
yeah.
must feel good though, to have someone
Yeah.
come in with that mindset closed off,
Yep.
and then you just totally change their perspective
Yep.
on
That'd
probably
be one of-
everything.
that'd
You
be
probably
one of the best
changed
parts of the job, right? Getting to see
You
other
probably
people
changed
enjoy
her
the
whole
land.
life.
Yeah, she
Possibly,
realised,
you know.
wow, I can be
you
comfortable
could
in the
have,
bush. Like our camp's pretty. It's not luxury, but it's very comfortable.
Just chip the poshiness right off her.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one that sticks to mind.
Good on you.
That's fucking.
I think that'd be one of the best parts about being a tour guide, and I've spoken about that, is just getting to see the enjoyment through other people's eyes.
Yeah,
as well.
you see people how they start a tour and after
Yep.
5 days finish a tour, and you have changed their life. They come out with a different understanding of things. And I mean, I've had several people, they've contacted me months later and they're still thinking about some of the
Yeah.
things they've learned and seen, and they're
That's
then
cool.
sharing it on. So it's great to have that sort of impact.
Yeah.
Not good.
What is something you are not good at?
Getting needles.
Oh, yeah. That's
I
fair.
hate absolutely.
Yep.
Like I'm terrified of needles.
Yep.
I can't
Yep.
even watch it on TV. COVID was the worst because every news broadcast was showing someone getting stuck with a needle, and I got all my vax, did it all, like did everything, but just I'm so scared of needles.
Yeah, fair enough. I think you're not the only person. There's a lot of people like that. Where we used to work, there was a lot of people like
Big
that.
tough
I've gotten
guys.
better. I've gotten better, but I've worked with.
Yeah.
I've caught the biggest venomous snakes in the world. I've been in India catching king cobra, like in the Western Ghats. But a needle, no, I can't do it.
You ever been bitten by a snake?
Only non-venomous snakes.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
when you're working with venomous species, it's a different
That's
level.
brutal, man.
Yeah.
That Andrew Euclid's getting the bloody the inland taipan. On
Inland
roller skates.
taipan. Yeah.
What?
Inland taipan, I mean, no one's died by an inland taipan bite, the most venomous snake in the world. They're quite placid.
Yeah, they're chill. Yep.
Yeah, they're relatively chill, different to a coastal taipan,
Yeah,
who
okay.
is right up there in the
And
top
aggressive.
2 or 3 venomous snakes in the world, and super
More people
bitey,
know,
really just agile. They can throw. That's a much scarier snake. I was working in southern India. I was working on a project tracking king cobra in the Western Ghats.
Oh, yeah.
Spent 2 months in the rainforests of the Western Ghats, following and catching the biggest venomous snakes in the world, and learning about how often they eat. They only eat other snakes. It was one of the most extraordinary experiences
That would
I've
have
ever had. I could write a book on that. It was
India's a wild
amazing.
place.
It's so cool.
Yeah,
You reckon you will ever write a book, or have you started, or you're gonna
One day, yeah. I've got too many stories
I
to
think it'd be good for your grandkids.
ahead of me to
Be good for the grandkids. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be good to pass on that knowledge when they.
yeah. It'd be
when
great
you're older.
to one day write a book and then
Yeah.
look back and go, wow, I've done all that.
Yeah, because we didn't even. I wanted to actually elaborate on that, but it's obviously getting by. But you've done a lot of travelling as well,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is what we like talking about. Because me
Yeah.
and Hoop have done a lot of travelling. That's always a big topic we love talking about. But yeah.
Whenever I travel too, I try to get to places that no one else is going, and
Yeah, of course,
the
yeah.
wildest places as well.
Yep.
And in the last few years, we've got ourselves in all sorts of crazy
What's some of the
situations.
wilder places you've been? Or
I was
any
in Kenya a
real
couple of years
crazy
ago.
travel yarn.
I was in Kenya a couple of years ago, and we did 38 days in the Mara doing a guiding course. So the reason I went there was to do this course, to learn to be a guide in. So rather than just go and do a safari, learn to take a safari.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
on foot every day. So we're learning off the Maasai, big tall fellas, how to walk through the bush with lions, with leopard, with elephant, with no weapons. If you learn this stuff in South Africa, weapons training's part of it. In Kenya, guides aren't allowed to carry weapons.
Why is
The only
that?
people
Bamboo
that can
stick.
have weapons are park staff. So national park rangers have weapons, but they just don't allow anyone weapons. It's
So what are you
It's
carrying a
just
stick
a law.
or something? Or?
plastic rake?
nothing. Yeah, nothing. You're carrying your
wow.
wits.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're learning how
So
to.
what do they learn to walk a certain way to sort of
learn
wear off predators and stuff, or what do they?
Well, mostly learning to read wildlife
Yeah,
and
okay.
understand, for one, where wildlife can be hiding. So don't put yourself in a situation where you come around a bush and a hippo's laying there in the shade. You're in big trouble. Or buffalo are the other one that are extremely dangerous animals. We learnt to walk with buffalo. I had this great experience where with the Maasai, we walked into a herd of buffalo. And these things, they kill people every year in Africa. You've got 150 buffalo and they're all watching you. I'm going, we're getting a bit close here. But they were saying once they're in a herd, they're not quite as dangerous.
Because they
They're pretty-
feel a bit
they're a
safer,
bit
maybe.
pretty
We
chill,
get to
yeah.
a point where they're looking on edge, and the Maasai have read, you go, this bull is actually, he's on the border of turning. So we'll turn around and walk away. And for about an hour, we're walking through the bush. The whole herd followed us for an hour, like seeing us off their country, just making sure they could see the...
Getting guided out.
And it's like you're looking back over your shoulder. You've got 150
Every 2
of
seconds,
these
wait for
giant buffalo following you, just at a distance, just
waiting for
following
the
you.
stampede.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that great documentary, The Lion King.
Yeah, yeah.
Buffalo stampedes are terrifying. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Fuck. What's something you are good at that people might be surprised by?
Chefing is one. I mean, if you spend a bit of time out bush and learn the life I lead now, to learn that I was a fine dining chef in these flash restaurants.
It's two different.
So what were you
polar
making
opposites,
them?
really.
Tiny little meals
Yeah.
for $200, little flash.
I did it
things?
all. I worked at restaurants where we did these big 24-course degustation menus.
shit.
Fucking hell.
Where you sit there for 3 hours eating lots of these little courses, and the amount of effort that goes into each of these courses.
Yeah. It's like art, eh?
Yeah. And when it's done right, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, if it's wanky for wank factor, you
Yeah.
eat it and you go, well, it's all right, but it's got to not just look amazing, it's got to taste like
Yep.
nothing you've ever... And so knowing that I can cook that sort of food as well, plus tuck a barrow on the coals and cook some damper on the hot earth. It's,
One end to the other, eh?
yeah, that shocks a lot of people because I can't imagine me. I can't imagine me in a fine dining restaurant now. I think
Yeah.
it would be like going in prison if I went back and did that again.
Never did the hard yards first.
Never used to wear the Akubra back then.
Nah, had a very different hat in the kitchen. Yeah, this
So
would
what's
only
your
come
favourite
out on
style
the
of
weekend.
Akubra? Well, what Akubra?
The sombrero. This is an Akubra sombrero that I rock now. It's the oldest Akubra they make, and it's the only one.
So is it the original one they made? Like,
So they used to, all the Kubras used to be called open crown. So they come with this massive big dome
Yep.
that you'd buy, and then you'd shape
You'd
yourself.
shape it yourself,
You'd shape
yeah,
it whatever. Now all of the Kubras come in set styles,
They're set.
except for this.
Okay.
This is an open crown. So you come, it looks ridiculous, and
Yep.
you've got to get the
And then
kettle
you
out,
shape it out.
and you get the steam on it, and then slowly shape it
yeah,
to
that's awesome.
to however.
And that's how they all would have done it back in the day,
Yeah,
eh?
yeah.
Like back
And
in
this
the 1800s
style,
and that.
I look at photos in the 1940s from the Northern Territory. Some of the mounted policemen, they have this exact
That same
same
one?
hat, and just by chance, I've bashed it into the exact same style as
Oh.
this now famous photo that I see around the place of this fella in the 1940s riding his horse through the territory.
Did you actually, you didn't wear that hat in high ground?
Nah,
They gave you another one?
Yeah, I had to.
I should have let you wear your hat, bud.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I would have loved to wear my own hat in that film, but no, probably better I didn't, because that'd be too recognisable as that mongrel that killed everyone.
Yeah, true. What's your favourite album of all time, or favourite artist? Like, what sort of music you flogging?
I love the Black Keys. Have done it
Okay.
for a long time.
Awesome.
I mean, I've liked the Black Keys. Obviously, they had some commercial success in the last, 5 or 10 years or whatever.
Yep.
But their early blues albums,
Real David
just
Bluesy, man. I'll have to
straight
check
up
them out,
rock and
eh?
roll blues.
I haven't
Oh,
checked out their older stuff.
they're all their first sort of 5 albums are just
Yep.
two lads, a guitar,
Yep.
a drum, and singing. Just perfect rock and roll blues.
Awesome. Okay.
So good.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
And your favourite quote of all time?
Well, it's a bit embarrassing, the favourite quote, because it's become meme worthy, and now it's I even accidentally used it on my Tinder profile years ago, where I actually met my wife on Tinder, wife on Tinder, and I didn't know that it had become this big thing that now everyone talks about. You only live once, so YOLO. For years, I've been thinking this great quote, like, you only have one crack at life, you only live once. Now it's become a bit cringy, like YOLO. But that idea that you really only have one crack at it. So wake up every day and think, what can I do today that's going to be a new experience, and what...
It is a good saying, and I used to rock it a bit too before it come.
Yeah.
When I was younger, you only live once, bud.
Yeah.
And
Now
then
I
it
only
become-
think it in my head. I don't say it out loud anymore. But now I've said it on the podcast. That's so I'll forever be known as
You got a
YOLO.
wife out of it, so it's not too bad.
She can't, but she was so ready to swipe no. Because you only live once. You go, what? Thankfully, she soon realised I had no idea that was a meme-worthy thing.
So these the tours, what is it, Adventure North?
Venture North Safaris.
How do the people get onto that?
Got a great website, Venture North Safaris, and we offer really small group tours into the most pristine remote parts of Northern Australia. Cultural nature-based tours, so maximum 6 people per tour.
Week long?
Week long, 5 days is our standard 5-day itinerary, and that goes from Darwin through Kakadu National Park up through Western Arnhem Land to the Coburg Peninsula, and then back to Darwin. Bit of fishing involved. Extraordinary rock art tour where we get binning Aboriginal people take us into one of the most stunning isolated rock art sites in Western Arnhem Land, and you're going through galleries where you point out this piece is 30,000 years old, but this piece here was painted 50 years ago. And I can find pieces from every period in between. So you're going into a gallery, where we talk about in European galleries, the Renaissance period, and a few periods of art going back hundreds of years. We got art going back thousands of generations, and so the tours are extraordinary, and I recommend everyone come out with Venture
What
North.
time of the year do they run?
From about May through to October.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, also Coburg Fishing Safaris. We run shoulder season fishing tours. If you're just mad on fishing and you want the best fishing experience you'll ever have, you can hop on a plane, head up to Darwin. Within an hour, you're on a light plane up at the coastal camp and spend 5 days with a group of mates fishing
That's
the best
sick.
fishing
awesome.
in Northern Australia. Yeah,
That's
and the
awesome.
diversity of fishing.
Yep.
Fuck, we might even have to try jump on
Oh,
one
I'd love
mid-year.
it. I'd love it.
Lads, get out.
I went
Get
on a
out.
tour. My dad used to be a tour guide up in the Territory for a
Oh,
company
wow,
called
yeah.
All Adventure Tours, I think it was. He went over
Yeah,
different...
they've been going a long time.
Yeah, so he did it for I think 10 years or something. And I went on a tour guide with him when I was 10, I believe. And we went from Alice Springs, we did Kings Canyon, Uluru, Katajuda, all that sort of stuff. And I was only 10 years old, and I thought it was amazing.
Oh.
Yeah, it was like a backpacker tour, I think.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Australians, you don't think about doing tours in Australia, but to go to places like Uluru or or Arnhem Land, you really need it to get the most out of it. You need to hop on a tour because they'll take you to places that no one else sees,
Yeah.
And give you
you'll actually
information
learn
that you
something.
wouldn't learn otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's something I recommend. I'm much more likely when I travel now to hop on some form of tour or get some form of guide in some part of it because realising
You get so much more out of it.
get information out of it, yeah.
Where before I'd be like, I'll just do it all myself.
Yeah, that's
And I still do it all myself, but I do a
Yep.
mix. I do a mix now.
No,
Oh,
awesome.
thanks for
Everyone,
coming on, man.
Yeah, fucking
My
appreciate
pleasure.
that.
Much appreciated.
Great to have a yarn.
And any other, before we go, anything else you got in the works? Anything else you want to talk about?
I suppose, this year we've got that show coming out on ABC,
Yep.
Eat the Invaders.
Yep.
And
Be sure to watch that.
apart from that, there's a few things on the cards this year I can't speak about. But
Good on you.
Just
No,
head
find out.
over to
We'll leave it at
Instagram's
that.
the main
Instagram,
thing.
David McMahon Australia. Give me a follow.
Give him a
We'll leave it
follow
at
and
that.
keep up
Thanks
to
for
date.
coming on, Dave. Thanks for sharing information.
pleasure.
You're
Awesome.
a bloody smart bugger, and you're probably the smartest bugger we've had on here. No, but we much appreciate it, man. That was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
No worries.
Yeah.
Take care, guys. Peace.
Yeah, well.